Hello chums, and welcome to Taming a Monster, the series where I take some of Gran Turismo 7's most ridiculous cars to see if I can tweak them so that a talentless pleb like me can handle them without being killed to death. Like any common ruffian, I'm using a bog standard PlayStation 5 controller, and I have all driver assists turned off, except for ABS. Let's see what car is trying to murder me today. Today we have a mouthful. This is the Lancia Delta HF Integrale Evoluzione. It has the VR38DE TT engine, which comes from the Nissan R35 GT-R Nismo. In simpler terms, here is a small hatchback from over 30 years ago with all-wheel drive and a twin-turbo V6 engine pushing over 1000 horsepower out. In theory, this car should be a force to be reckoned with. As usual, every upgrade has been applied along with the wide-body modification, but all of the settings are currently default, except for the downforce, which has been maxed, as most players are likely to do, and the transmission, which has already been adjusted to suit this car's slightly increased power output. It has aftermarket wheels one size up from standard. Increasing the size of the wheels can ever so slightly improve agility, though in some cases this can come at the cost of some stability, as well as the car's ability to take bumps or curbs. It has the Type B front splitter for front downforce, a rear diffuser which adds front and rear downforce, very important, and a rear wing to keep it all stable. Both rear wing options provide the same downforce levels, so it doesn't matter which you choose. If you're interested in learning more about aero, downforce, or any other aspect of tuning your car, I have a series called Tuning for Beginners which covers everything from suspension to differential to the transmission. The test track was the Eiger circuit, since the hairpins will make for some very fun footage. The car had a suitably nutty launch, which was stifled by the big fat Lexus in front of me. The Delta GT-R didn't exhibit too many unfavourable handling characteristics despite the default settings. Part of this is down to the choice of track. The Eiger circuit doesn't really allow you to go fast enough to really push the limits of stability on a 1000 horsepower monster. However, this car combined with this track is one of the most fun combinations in the game. The limited high-speed sections that there are did still reveal some odd tendencies where the rear end kept sagging. Whoops. For the sake of my OCD, I lowered the front end to make the car sit visually even. I increased anti-roll bar stiffness, more so at the rear to help with the inevitable lift-off oversteer. I also increased natural frequency, which is borderline necessary for any road car on racing tyres. While the firmer ride can introduce some braking oversteer in all-wheel drive cars, the reduced body roll is well worth the trade-off. That reduction in body roll made this car feel much more controlled. You cheeky little bitch. Body roll makes cars on racing tyres extremely difficult to drive, especially at higher speeds where they can feel like the steering is wandering. The stiffer ride did introduce some more oversteer when braking, which we'll have to try and fix with future adjustments. Next up, I tweaked the differential. Increasing initial torque at the front can make a big difference to oversteer under braking without introducing too much understeer on all-wheel drives. Increasing acceleration sensitivity sends more power to the outside wheels, helping the car pull itself around corners. Increasing it more at the rear also has the same effect. I also reduced braking sensitivity to make the brakes feel more effective.
Don't worry, Max Verstappen said it's okay.
The LSD adjustments made the car more predictable, especially when braking. However, on a track like this with such tight turns, the changes to the initial torque made the car slightly less willing to turn in. These changes will have a much more positive effect on tracks like the Nurburgring, with high-speed sections that can unsettle the car more. My final changes were to increase compression, which usually makes curbs unsettle the car less. I reduced camber, which usually helps slightly with braking distances. Reducing more at the rear also helps with the oversteer when braking. I added some rear toe out to help the car pull itself out of corners, and some front toe out to reduce oversteer when braking. While this setup didn't necessarily suit this particular track, it will make the car more stable for the majority of other applications. If you're driving a car like this on a tighter track like the Eiger circuit or Tsukuba for example, reducing the initial torque at the front should be the only change needed to make the car more agile for those sharp corners. For now though, it was time to tackle the Nurburgring, where I realised I had made a mistake. On my first attempt, I realised that the car was extremely unstable at high speeds with very twitchy steering. I realised that I'd forgotten to add the increased body rigidity upgrade. This subtle upgrade isn't very well explained in the game, but it can be a lifesaver when it comes to high-speed stability. Beyond that, the only changes I made were to increase acceleration sensitivity at the rear and reduce front toe out. I'm not sure why, but I expected this car to do worse than the Porsche 911 turbo-swapped WRX from a few episodes ago. One reason for this is the difference in age between these two cars isn't far off the age gap between Mick Jagger and whoever his current partner is. Generally, newer cars in Gran Turismo put their power down more effectively. Plus, the Lancia's brakes are not exactly effective at stopping a car that's making 5 times the power of its stock engine. What I didn't account for was just how good this car would turn out to be. The primary reason for that is the rear diffuser. I'm willing to bet that if the Impreza had a rear diffuser option, it would be capable of lapping the Nordschleife in under 6 minutes. But it doesn't, so instead we have a 33-year-old hatchback showing the Scooby-Roo how it should be done. Something worth mentioning is that this car is still quite twitchy at high speeds. The main reason is that I've chosen to keep the downforce maxed, but it's fairly high at the front compared to the rear, 200 versus 250. If you struggle with this particular setup, I would recommend reducing that front downforce to roughly 150 points, so that it's 100 points lower than the rear. Other than that, this may be one of the best engine swaps in Gran Turismo as far as raw pace and accessibility is concerned. In racing situations, it will still get beaten out by the race car swaps, such as the 787B engine in the Mazda 3 or the R92CP engine in the Nissan Skylines, because those engines have excellent fuel economy thanks to their race car origins. However, I'm pretty sure this batshit little Lancia will match them on lap time alone. If you have a VR38 engine and you're not sure which car to fit it to, get a Delta. This car rather slaps. In the end, the Delta gets a 6 minutes, 9 seconds, just ahead of the Escudo-swapped Mitsubishi GTO. A top 5 time is pretty damn impressive for this boxy old hot hatch. I cannot recommend this engine swap enough. So, that was my attempt to tame a monster. I hope my settings helped, or that you enjoyed this video. Join me next time where I'm probably driving a car that's nowhere near this good. Thank you very much for watching, and if you're feeling particularly generous, I would greatly appreciate your subscription. Take care, and ta-ra!